In the 16th through about the early 19th century, an English child's first formal encounter with the written word may have been with a device that's known as a hornbook. Some of the greatest writers in our collection would have been taught the rudiments, the basics of reading and writing with devices like the hornbooks that we have here. A hornbook presents the alphabet, often with a syllabary in a short Christian text like the Lord's Prayer, on a piece of paper, either printed or handwritten. And that piece of paper would have been mounted on a paddle-shaped piece of wood or a piece of sewn leather and protected by a thin layer of animal horn that was flattened out. And that's where the hornbook gets its name, from that piece of translucent material that protected the text from the grubby hands of kids that were likely to destroy things. The Ransom Center has 3 of these more typical type of hornbooks. 2 are a single piece of wood that's been carved into the paddle shape with the text on paper with the horn over it. One of the ones we have is a handwritten example that's probably from the later 17th or early 18th century. Another example, a little bit smaller paddle, has the printed alphabet, the syllabary, the Lord's Prayer, and that's a printed example probably from the very early 19th century, maybe even America as opposed to England. The other example of these more typical types that we have is a very small leather hornbook. And this is a hybrid of manuscript. The alphabet is written out, but the text on that example, which comes from the book of Romans, is printed. Again, early 17th century. We also have a little bit odder of an example of a hornbook that's been cast in lead. And this has the alphabet, but some of the letters are backwards on it, leading scholars to believe that this type of hornbook was used not as a bona fide educational tool, but as a sort of toy for children to play with so they could play school. The vast majority of hornbooks seem to have been that simple, right? That they have just the text protected on a paddle. But there were some hornbooks that were a little more elaborate, having additional features. One of the most interesting looking kind is one where you have the paddle, and then on top of the paddle is a functional abacus, so that the device combines education and literacy with numeracy. Unfortunately, we don't have one of those at the Ransom Center, but very recently we acquired a leather hornbook that is unique as far as I can tell in terms of its features. So this one is a sort of got a cross-shaped handle. The text would have been here on a piece of paper covered in horn. I have the piece of horn here, but the text that it once included is a reproduction text that was probably made in the 19th century. But the hornbook itself, I suspect, is from the 17th century, although it can be very difficult to date these materials without something elaborate like carbon dating. But what's so exciting about this one is not, I mean, it's cool to have any leather hornbook, but if you turn it around, on the back of it, it has something that is very special. So there's this leather cord here that was once attached on the bottom here to this stylus, which is made out of wood. And when you take the stylus out of this little spot here, you have a door that can open up. And behind this door is currently a piece of plain paper. But originally, this would have been either sort of waxed material or a kind of gesso-based coating that would allow a child to use the stylus to scrawl letters or words onto it that they could then erase later. That would have allowed this hornbook to sort of do double duty. This child could look at any of that text that was on the front and then turn it around and practice their writing. So in the period, people often distinguish the teaching of reading from the teaching of writing as 2 separate sort of skills. But this is a hornbook that tries to make that conversion from being able to read to being able to write. I know of no other examples of its kind, which makes this one very special indeed. It's really exciting to have examples of hornbooks in the Ransom Center's collection because we as an institution are committed to documenting the creative process.